Welcome. I'm back. Begin by sharing some powerful news that I understand that in addition to the fact that Sunday night there were 20,000 people, they say, at the location where the massacre took place last week. 20,000 people gathered this Sunday night for the lighting of the 8th Hanukkah with a determination not to let darkness prevail under any circumstances. And today I understand that they decided to open up a Chabad house on the site. And they brought 2 trailers there as a temporary beginning, and the plan is to open up a permanent no, in Sydney.
That's what I'm saying.
In the place where it happens. So a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. The Eibusher should help. There's a lot of light being lit up all over the world. A lot of Yidden are incredible nation. The amount of mitzvahs and Pirsamei Nisa and that were done and that continue to be done, inspired by this, is unbelievable. The Eibusher should help already. We should already have enough of Golus and we should already to see the Geula Shlema, which we usually start off with something from the Seder. Okay. So just to mention that Yaakov Avinu was going down to Mitzrayim when he got the message that Yosef is alive and he's asking him to come and join him in Mitzrayim. So Yaakov Avinu was hesitant about leaving Eretz Yisrael, about going to Mitzrayim. So the pasuk says that Hashem said to Yaakov, "Anoichi ered imcha Mitzrayima, ve'anoichi alcha gam olay." I will descend to Mitzrayim with you, and I will also bring you back up. So Hashem is encouraging Yaakov to make the journey to Mitzrayim and promising him that Hashem will be with him and Hashem will bring him back. As we know that Yaakov Avinu, his remains were brought back from Mitzrayim, and he was buried in Maras HaMachpelah. However, the Lashon. So first of all, there's 2 points in here. One point is Anochi Ered Imcha Mitzrayim. I will descend with you to Mitzrayim, which means that in Mitzrayim I will be with you. You're not going to be there alone. I will be with you, and I'll be there with you all the time. And this is not only about Yaakov Avinu. This is a klal for every Yid. A Yid has to know wherever he is, the Eibusher is with you. And this reminds me of the story. I've told it over many times. And Mrs. Simon, who runs a Chabad house together with her husband over here, when I came to England 43 years ago, she was a Bas Mitzvah girl. And shortly before that, she took a journey to America as an 11-year-old girl. She traveled to America on her own as an unaccompanied minor. And her grandparents were living then, Aleim HaShalom, were living then in America. So her parents took her to the airport, and grandparents picked her up on the other end. However, sending an 11-year-old girl alone on such a journey, obviously there was a little bit of so they wrote a letter to the Rebbe asking for a bracha that she should have an uneventful journey, a safe journey. And they wrote that Chana Feiger Bas Tzidul Rezel was traveling as an unaccompanied minor from London to New York, this and this day, whatever it is, and asking a bracha that she should have a safe trip, an uneventful trip, whatever it is. So the Rebbe would often respond to letters by taking the same letter that he received and making some comments with his pencil, and then giving it to the secretary to contact the person who sent the letter to tell them what the Rebbe's response was. So on this paper, the Rebbe took the word unaccompanied and crossed out the letters UN from the word unaccompanied. And after the word accompanied, he wrote in with a pencil, by Hashem. There's no such thing as a Jewish child being unaccompanied. A Jewish child, wherever they are accompanied by Hashem. And this is a yesod, it's a principle. And this is to do with today's Seder, where it says, Anoichi Ered Imcha Mitzrayim. Hashem says, I myself, using the term Anoichi, which is higher than all the Shemus. We have the Kadosh Baruch Hu is referred to by 7 names. Shiva Shemus She'ein Nimchakim. And Anoichi is even higher, because Anoichi refers to the essence of Hashem, which cannot be alluded to by any word, by any letter, by any thorn of a letter. And that is the essence of Hashem, is with every Jew wherever he is. Anoichi Ered Imcha Mitzrayim. I will go down with you to Mitzrayim, and I will bring you back up. However, it would have been enough to say, Anoichi eidet imcha Mitzrayim, Anoichi alcha. I will go with you to Mitzrayim, and I will bring you up. Why does the pasuk add the extra two words, gam oloi, also to bring you up? I'm going to bring you up. Why does it have to say gam oloi? So our Chachamim say that the extra words gam oloi imply that there's another ascent. This descent to Mitzrayim will be followed by an ascent, but gam oloi there will be another ascent, and the other ascent is the ultimate geula. The end of the whole Golus Mitzrayim is one portion of the Golus, but the concept of Golus in the bigger picture includes all the Golus, Golus Mitzrayim, and later Golus Babel and Golus Edom, until the coming of Mashiach. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Yaakov, Anoichi eiret imcha Mitzrayim, Anoichi alcha gam oloi. I'll bring you up from Mitzrayim, and I'll also bring you up from the ultimate Golus with the coming of Mashiach. And all along, this is the Kretschmer is saying, until you get to the end, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us and with every single Jew at every moment and at every point. And the more we recognize that and the more we realize that, the better off we are. In fact, there's a famous question is asked in connection with the story of Purim. Right, we're done with Hanukkah, so we can already start talking about Purim. And in the story of Purim, so we know that there was a terrible decree to destroy, eliminate, and annihilate all the Yidden. So the Gemara asks, what did the Yidden do to deserve such a terrible decree? So the Gemara says they benefited from the feast of the wicked Achashverosh. Because Achashverosh invited the Jewish people to the feast, and they benefited from the feast of the rest. And the Gemara asks, that only explains why people in Shushan, why they, but you see clearly that benefiting from the feast of that Rasha, Achashverosh, is considered, at least in the suggestion of the Gemara, as a reason for that decree. So the question is, what was the worst thing that happened as a result of attending that feast? The worst thing that could have happened is they ate non-kosher food. Since when, for eating non-kosher food, does one deserve capital punishment? And that the entire Jewish people should be annihilated, men, women, and children even before Bar Bas Mitzvah, that are not responsible for their actions, all from the fact that they ate non-kosher food. That doesn't seem to make sense. So there's a beautiful explanation from the Rabbi where he explains it very, very beautifully. It says like this, and this is a very, very fundamental thing to remember, especially in the times that we live now. The Jewish people in Golus are a kivsa achas bein shivim ze'ev. We're one lamb between 70 wolves. Our existence and our protection and our in Golus doesn't make any sense. We're one lamb between 70 wolves. If you have one lamb between 70 wolves, the rules of nature dictate that the 70 wolves are going to devour the lamb. But it goes further. But we have an incredibly great shepherd. And the shepherd is the Almighty. And when the shepherd looks after us, the 70 wolves cannot affect us. So as long as Yidden are aware that their safety and their security is dependent on the Gadol Haraya and the great shepherd that's looking after them, then they can draw down that protection. That can make that protection a reality. But when Achashverosh invited the Yidden to his feast, and the Yidden worse, they said, wow, what a special privilege. King Achashverosh has invited us to his feast. So they didn't just go to the feast. They enjoyed it. They felt privileged to be invited to Achashverosh's feast. And they said, Achashverosh, the big, powerful king Achashverosh, likes us. He's inviting us to his feast. We're in good hands. Now we're safe. Achashverosh is going to look after us. At the moment that Yidden took their eye off the ball, they no longer were relying on the fact that Hashem, in his infinite, omnipotent shepherding powers, is going to protect them. And they thought for a moment that they can rely on Achashverosh. So immediately, things return to the natural state. The natural state is that one lamb between 70 wolves doesn't stand a chance. So automatically comes along a Haman and makes a Gzeda, Hashbet Lavid Alavid, this Kawai Yehudim. But when Yidden know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is their shepherd, and he's the one who looks after them, then there's nothing that can stand in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way. There's nothing that's more powerful than him. And we can be absolutely trusting that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will look after us. And there's nothing to worry about, because Habayteach B'Hashem Chesed Yosef Vivenu. One who trusts in Hashem is encircled with kindness.
Yosef tried to be corrected, but it wasn't so much it was food. It was on what it was served that they served it.
On the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, it was a desecration of the Kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash. True, that is said, but even then, it's still hard to understand that should warrant such a terrible decree, including children that are not even responsible for their actions. But the way this perspective that it's not causing the destruction, it's just removing the protection that's been keeping it away all along. It's another short thought on the Sedra before we find a puzzling thing in this week's Sedra. One of the very emotional moments in the Sedra is when Yosef identifies himself and reveals himself to his brother. And the words that he uses are, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, Ha'ed Avichad. Is my father still alive? And it's very puzzling because the whole time they were talking about their father. That's why they needed to get Binyamin saved, because their father didn't want Binyamin to go, and if they're going to come back without Binyamin, he's not going to be able to survive. And that was the whole argument. So what's the question suddenly he's asking now? Ani Yosef Ha'ed Avichad. There's many answers given to this question. But in the simple Shutish or Mikra answer, simple answer according to the Pshat, the Rebbe suggests the following: that Yosef is saying, we know, Rashi's told us this before, that there is when a person Chas v'Shalom passes away, so it's very painful for their near and dear relatives. However, there is a Gzeira, there's a heavenly decree that with time, a mess is mishtakach min halev. A person after he passes away is slowly forgotten, in the sense that the intensity of the pain slowly becomes lighter. And that's why there's 7 days of mourning, 30 days of mourning, 12 months of mourning, and then it's a different story. However, that only applies in the case where a person has passed away. But in a case where the person is alive and the person is thought to be dead, then this Gzeira of Abes Mishtachach Man Alev doesn't apply. Therefore, it says, Vayisabel al b'noi yomim rabim. Yaakov mourned for Yosef many, many days, meaning more than just a year. The whole entire 22 years that Yaakov and Yosef were separated, Yaakov was mourning for Yosef. Why? Because since he hasn't died, so the Gzeira of the Names Mishtachach Man Alev didn't apply. So the pain that Yaakov had of being separated from Yosef was not dulled with time. So he continued to mourn for 22 years. So Yosef said to his brothers, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, I'm alive. And being that I'm alive, and my father thinks that something happened to me, so he must be in terrible, terrible pain. And this is going on continuously for 22 years. So Ha'ed Avichai, is it possible that he's still alive? Is it possible that he can handle his pain for 22 years and survive? Maru v'alu el Avi, go quickly and go up to my father and tell him that I'm alive, so that he shouldn't have to suffer, because who knows if he'll be able to hold out. Every day that he survives in this state of pain is a pella, it's a wonder. So the quicker you'll go back to my father and inform him that I'm alive, the better it'll be. And this also explains why in the same breath he says, it's not you that sent me here, but rather it's the Almighty. And he made me the viceroy for Pare, and he's given me an opportunity. He's given me an opportunity. He's given me an opportunity to provide sustenance for the entire nation and for many nations, and for your family and everything. So why is this important in this conversation? Because Yosef is saying to his brothers, in case you'll say to me, if it's such an emergency that you should go up so quickly and inform Yaakov that I'm alive, and bring Yaakov here because we can't be separated any longer, so then why am I not going to Yaakov? Why doesn't Yosef go? So Yosef immediately explains, because it's not you that sold me here, that you sent me here. The Almighty, it's the Almighty's plan. I have a mission here. And my mission is to be the viceroy of Egypt and to make sure that the whole world has sustenance. If I take my eye off the ball, then there could be my whole mission to save the world can fall apart. So I'm not allowed to leave Mitzrayim to go back up. to tell Yaakov that I'm alive. So you go on my behalf and inform him and bring him down to Mitzrayim so we can be reunited. In addition to that, we also know that because, Rashi told us this before, that because Yaakov was separated from Yitzchak for 22 years and he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of honoring his father, so therefore he was separated from Yosef for 22 years. So Yosef is saying to his brothers, the fact that divine providence has allowed us to, so the 22 years are over. So till now, Yaakov had to suffer because that was the divine decree. But now that the 22 years are over, quickly go back and tell him that I'm alive and there's no need to suffer. Because now it's suffering, now we're suffering for nothing. And the lesson to be learned from this, a very, very powerful lesson. Sometimes you have to use education, raising a child. Sometimes you have. Usually, you want to use yamin mekareves. We want to use the right hand that draws near as much as possible. Sometimes there's a circumstance where you have to use a bit of harshness. But when that happens, that you have to use a bit of harshness, you have to be careful that the second that harshness is no longer necessary, remove it right away. Yosef said, obviously, the Eibishter, for reasons that are beyond our understanding, chose to punish Yaakov, that for 22 years he should be separated from Yosef. And now that the 22 years are over, you go as quickly as you can back to Yaakov and tell him that I'm alive and bring him here so that he shouldn't have to suffer for one moment longer than necessary. Also to mention, tonight and tomorrow is the 5th of Tevis, Hey Tevis. And in Lubavitch, Hey Tevis is a special day. To do with the fact, it's known as the Yom Tov of Didan Natzach. Literally means ours is victorious. And it goes back to a story that took place just about 40 years ago, where the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rebbe Rayatz, previous Rebbe, had a vast library that he invested tremendous energy and funds into putting together this incredibly vast library, still in Russia, and it was very, very dear to him. The fact that in hard times he spent money on it and a lot of energy into it, and to just point out how important it was to him is that in 1927, after his 7th arrest under the communists, when he was originally a death sentence, and then it was committed to 3 years of hard labor, and then it was changed to 10 years of hard labor, and then it was changed to 3 years of exile, and then 3 years of exile miraculously turned into a week in exile, and he was liberated on Yud Beis Tammuz Tafresh Beis Ayin in 1927. So then the local KGB in Petersburg, in Leningrad, where he lived, said that as far as they're concerned, they're not done with him, and they're going to try and rearrest him. It was the central government in Moscow that gave the instructions to liberate him, but the local KGB in Leningrad threatened that they're going to rearrest him. So his life was in jeopardy every moment that he stayed in Russia, and everything had to be done to be able to get him out of Russia. And a whole story was devised through Riga, through the Latvian government, to be able to get him out of Russia, and it was successful, most incredible way. But when the Frierdiker Rebbe was given the plan of how he could be rescued and how he could go out of Russia, he wanted to know if he could take his library, if he could be able to take his library with him. And when it was put into question that they might not allow his library to go with him, he said he's not leaving unless he can take his library. So that just shows how precious the library was to him. And after it came to America, the library came with him. Eventually, it was brought, and it was there's a lot of stories how the library journeyed along, and the vast majority of the library reached 770 and was held partially in Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment and partially in the basement of 770. And in the mid-1980s, suddenly it became known that some of the books of this library have appeared on the market of booksellers, which means that somebody was taking books from the library and selling them off, and they were appearing on the market. The Rebbe was very concerned about this, and he said that he was concerned about this because every one of those books, how dear it was to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Therefore, it's in his expression, it's a shtik leben from the Rebbe and the Shver. Each one of those books it says, Tanya, it says that the life of a tzaddik is not the life of flesh, but the life of faith, love of Hashem, and fear of Hashem. So the Sfarim of the tzaddik in which he studies, they sustain the faith and the love and the fear. So that's his life. That's his real life. To take books away from a tzaddik, that's taking a piece of his life. And he also mentioned that the way things work in the market of book dealers is that things very quickly move from one dealer to another. And it's very hard to trace where the books end up. And it's very likely that these books, Chas v'Shalom, end up in the Vatican. He says they know the value of these books. They understand what it means that a book belongs to a tzaddik and what they could, Chas v'Shalom, these books should land up there. And everything has to be done to sort this matter out. So they investigated, and it turned out that it was a grandson of the previous Rebbe who was either taking the books or arranging for the books to be taken and selling them to make money on them. And the Rebbe, they tried to reason with him, and he said that he is an heir, and he's entitled to a portion of the books. His mother told him he's entitled to a portion of the books, and he's not taking notice of anything. Now the Rebbe eventually came out public with it, spoke about it publicly, and he explained that this is not private. It's not the private belongings of the Frierdiker Rebbe that anybody can come along and say, if I have an inheritance. This library belongs to the Lubavitch movement. It was bought by the Frierdiker, with all the effort that the Frierdiker Rebbe put into setting up the library. It's not just somebody has a private library, has a hobby to have a library. He invested in it and built it for the benefit of the Lubavitch movement. It belongs. It's like the crown jewels of the Lubavitch movement. So no individual can come along and say. And besides, to take a portion of an inheritance, you don't just pick whatever you want. Assuming there is a case for inheritance, you have to have a bezdin, and the bezdin has to evaluate and have to decide, and it has to be with the agreement of all the heirs. And then the Rebbe explained that really it's a much deeper issue. It's a much deeper issue because our Chachamim say, next week's Sedra, it says that Yaakov expired, and it doesn't say he died. Expired, and he was gathered into his nation. It doesn't use the word he died. And the Gemara says, Yaakov Avinu leimes. Yaakov Avinu never died. What does it mean he never died? They embalmed him, they buried him. What do you mean he never died? So the Gemara says, Mazare b'chaim afu b'chaim. Just like his seed, his progeny is alive, so he is alive. What does that mean? That means that Yaakov Avinu's life wasn't personal. Yaakov Avinu's life was Yiddishkeit. And as long as Yiddishkeit is around, Yaakov Avinu is alive. And in this sense, when you say about a tzaddik, that leimes, that he didn't die, he's still alive, it means that what the tzaddik lived for, and what the tzaddik represented, and what the tzaddik was all about, is his teachings and his message and what he's inspired. And as long as that continues to exist, the tzaddik is alive. So basically what he's saying is that the Frierdiker Rebbe wasn't a private individual. The Frierdiker Rebbe was the Lubavitch movement. And the Lubavitch movement is alive. And therefore there's no discussion of inheritance. And obviously the other side wasn't so cooperative and refused to go to a bezdin to deal with it. So it had to be dealt with in court. First of all, they needed a court injunction to stop him from continuing to sell books. The books that he had in his possession had to be removed from him. And they were held by the court. And a major case took place, which was a very complicated case, because there was very heavy arguments on both sides. Is it the private belongings of the Frierdiker Rebbe and therefore belongs to his descendants, or is it the belongings of the Lubavitch movement? And the Rebbe felt that this is really, really very, very fundamental to get this sorted out, and it has to be dealt with. I mean, essentially, had it gone the other way, it wouldn't only be a question of the books. It would be the books, it would be 770, it would be everything. If it's all just the private belongings of the private individual, and it was a very complicated court case. And actually, the Rebbetzin, Chayamushka, the Rebbe's wife, was the deposition was taken from the lawyers came to interview her to use that as evidence in court. And she was a very private person. She generally did not, but for this, she received the lawyers and she was interviewed by them. And one of the questions they asked her was, which is a phenomenal thing in itself, one of the questions they asked her is, in your opinion, who did the books belong to? Did they belong to your father or did they belong to the Hasidim? In your opinion. She grew up in her father's house, and she was, in your opinion, who did the books belong to? So she answered, my father belonged to the Hasidim. So obviously, everything that he owned belonged to the Hasidim. And the judge later said that this made a very, very powerful impression on him. Watching this deposition, hearing these words from the Rebbetzin made a very powerful impression on him. And on 5th of Tevis, Tavshin Mem Zayin, the ruling, which was on Tuesday, and Shlishi Yochel by Kitov, just like with the Skislev and Yud Beis Tammuz, the ruling came out that the library is the belongings of Agudas Chassidei Chabad, and that nobody has a right to take anything away from there, and the books that were held by the court were returned. Eventually, after an appeal, it's a complicated story, but so this is a very, very meaningful day in Lubavitch, and the Rebbe recommended that one of the ways it should be celebrated is by buying svarim. People should buy svarim either for themselves or to donate to a shul or shiva or whatever, a library, and either to buy svarim or at least to bind to something svarim need fixing and improving, but to celebrate in a way that's connected with svarim. Another occasion he said that since it's the victory of the svarim, we have to ask the svarim how to celebrate. So in other words, to strengthen ourselves in those matters that the svarim talk about, or the Torah talks about. And this is a victory for Kedusha, and one victory should lead to further victory until the ultimate victory of good over good, holiness over unholiness. And it should already be the Geula Shlema. Now we're going to move on to Tanya. We're finally starting a new chapter, Perek Daled. Which is on page Ches, number 14 on the bottom of the page. In Chitas, we're already on chapter 7. Yeah. Not long ago we did. That's correct. Yes. I don't know the answer. Yes. At the time. Go back to her. But her father didn't let her. So Perek Daled I guess it's page Ches, number 14 in bilingual Tanya, on the bottom of the page. So we're in chapter 3, Perek Gimel. We spoke about the 10 faculties of the neshama, the 3 intellectual faculties, and the 7 emotional faculties. In chapter 4, in Perek Daled, we're going to talk about the 3 garments of the soul. Now, before we talk about what exactly is the difference between the faculties of the soul and the garments of the soul, let me try to refresh our memories from what we learned in the title page of Tanya. Remember, the title page of Tanya, we learned about the Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of the in-betweener, intermediate, and we explained that a Beinani is someone who is 100% in order when it comes to doing the right thing, but not necessarily successful in being the right thing. And being that our mission in this world has 2 parts to it. One part of our mission is to do the right thing, which includes doing the right thing, speaking the right thing, and thinking the right thing, not doing the wrong things, not speaking the wrong things, and not thinking the wrong thing. But there's also the other part of our mission in this world is to be the right thing. And to be the right thing is measured not by what you're doing, but rather by what you are. How do you measure what you are? What are you excited about? What are you enthusiastic about? What are you passionate about? How you understand reality? So if a person understands that Hashem is the only true reality and everything else is insignificant, that defines a certain type of existence. If a person understands, his understanding is that the physical world is significant. Money is valuable, pleasures are valuable, the luxuries are valuable. That makes a different type of person. It's not just a question of what he's doing, it's a question of what's important to him. And the same thing is when you talk about a person's desires and passions. What are the person's desires? Are the person's desires to get closer to Hashem, or a person's desires to have more pleasure? It's a different person. You could have a situation where a person is on the wrong page internally, but nevertheless forces himself to do the right thing. Like many times, after all, Yiddishkeit demands of us that even if we don't feel like it, we should do it anyway. So you can have a situation where a person is in a state where he values pleasure, he values luxury, he values honor, he values good taste, he values whatever it is, but nevertheless, he says, I know what I should be doing. I should be studying Torah and doing mitzvahs, and therefore I'm going to do what I need to do, rather than what I feel like doing. So he is doing the right thing, but he's not necessarily, he can't say that he is the right thing internally. And the Torah says, you have to exterminate evil also from within yourself. Not just enough to exterminate evil from your actions, or from your speech, or from your thought. You also have to work on, to whatever extent you're able to, exterminating evil from within yourself and replacing that with good, replacing that with a passion for godliness, a passion for Torah, a passion for mitzvahs, a passion for being one with Hashem. So this is the basic difference between what we spoke about in chapter 3, about the Eser Koiches HaNefesh, the 10 faculties of the soul, the 3 intellectual faculties of the soul, Chachma, Bina, Das, and the 7 emotional faculties of the soul, which are primarily Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, love for Hashem and fearing Hashem, and all their offspring, all their branches and all their extensions. So there you're talking primarily about what the person is. What the person is based on his understanding of reality and based on what his desires are. What does he love? What does he fear? What is he passionate about? And what does he want to stay away from with a 10-foot pole because he knows that this is not where he wants to go? That all defines what the person is. And now in chapter 4, the Alter Rebbe is going to approach the second part of the equation, which is doing the right thing. The garments of the soul, the 3 garments of the soul, the way the soul manifests itself in practice is through the 3 garments of thought, speech, and deed. What you understand and what you feel is expressed through your thought, through your speech, and through your deed. But they're not the soul, they're the garments of the soul. And one of the reasons they're called garments is because just like physical garments, you can very easily remove a garment and replace it. If a person is wearing one type of clothing, removes one type of clothing and replaces it with another type of clothing, it doesn't mean the person has become a transformed individual. It means they're wearing a different garment now. The same thing is true with a thought. You can change a thought. A person can have a desire to think the wrong thing and say, I'm not going to think the wrong thing. I'm going to think the right thing. Why should I think a negative thought? I'll think a positive thought. Why should I think a fearful thought? I'll think a thought of that gives me confidence, that gives me trust. You can do that. You can change your thoughts, but you can't. It's not so easy to change your inner self. You can change your thoughts that are say deliberate thoughts. I can say right now I'm not going to think this thought. I'll think that thought. Right now I'm not going to say this. I'm going to say that. Right now I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do that. But that doesn't mean you've transformed yourself. Might be a good point in that direction, but that doesn't mean that the person has become transformed. The person can say, I'm dealing with a certain weakness, I'm dealing with a certain issue, but in practice, I'm going to think the right thing, I'm going to say the right thing, I'm going to do the right thing. So garments can be changed at will, but your inner self, to change your inner self, that's a major program. To change yourself, to begin to understand the world in a different light, to be able to feel differently about things. That's not just something you press a button and you start feeling. So in Perek Daled, the Alter Rebbe begins by saying, in addition to the 10 faculties of the soul that we spoke about in chapter 3, every godly soul also has 3 garments. Sheheim, what are the 3 garments? They are machshava, dibur, u'maaseh. They are thought, speech, and deed. And since we're talking about the godly soul, so obviously the thought, speech, and deed of the godly soul are thoughts, speech, and deed that connect us with Hashem. Just like when we describe the intellectual faculties of the soul, we explained that it's the wisdom and the understanding of the greatness of Hashem. When we spoke about the emotional faculties of the soul, we spoke about the love for Hashem and the fear of Hashem. Similarly, when we speak about the garments of the godly soul, they are the machshava, dibur, u'maaseh shel taryag mitzvos haTorah. The thought, speech, and deed of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. A person with his power of action, power of deed, garment of deed, fulfills all the practical mitzvahs. And with his power of speech, with his garment of speech, he's engaged in the explanation of all the 613 mitzvahs and their laws. So he speaks about the explanations of the mitzvahs and the laws of the mitzvahs. And with his thought, he comprehends the Parshas HaTorah, everything that he's capable of comprehending in the 4 sections of Torah: Parshas, Pshat, Remez, Drush, and so. The word Parshas literally means an orchard, but it's a Rashi Tevis. It's an acronym for Pshat, Remez, Drush, and so. Pshat is the simple meaning, Remez is what it alludes to, Drush is the homiletical meaning, and so is the mystical meaning. So these are the 4 levels of Torah. So when a person with his power of thought engages in the understanding of the 600 of everything that he's capable of understanding in the 4 levels of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid of Torah. Mentioning the Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid reminds me of a story that in Tzfas, about 450 years ago, 500 years ago, there were many Gedolei Yisrael living simultaneously in Tzfas. There was the Beis Yosef, wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef. There was the Alshich, the Moshe Alshich. There was the Arizal, a Kabbalist. There was Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, the author of the Chadodi. So Rav Shlomo Alkabetz was the Chazan. The Arizal was the Makubal. Beis Yosef was the Rav, and Alshich was the Darshan. His thing was Drush. So the Alshich used to attend the Shiurim of the Arizal, and he often would fall asleep, involuntarily. He would fall asleep during the Shiurim. He attended the Shiurim, Kabbalah Shiurim of the Arizal, and he would doze off. And it bothered him very much. So the Arizal told him that he shouldn't let it bother him, because obviously his neshama is from the Chelek HaDrush of Torah, rather than from the Chelek HaSoid. So every neshama has a part of Torah that's more connected with them. But for that, you have to be on the level where you're in touch with your neshama. right? For people like us, we fall asleep because our neshama is concealed. You're talking about tzaddikim, his neshama is revealed. His neshama was connected. There's 4 levels of Torah. Pshat, Remes, Drush, and Soy. And then we always speak about the 5 levels of the neshama: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida. So the 4 levels of Pshat, Remes, Drush, and Soy correspond to the 4 levels of the neshama: nefesh, ruach, neshama, and chaya. Nefesh corresponds to Pshat, ruach to Remes, and neshama to Drush, and chaya to Soy, the mystical part of Soy. And obviously, you want to know what's with Yechida. So, those of you who were by the Inspire conference, was a whole big deal made of the fact that it's 60 years since the Rebbe said the Sikha in Tavshin Chavav about Inyana Shel Teres Chassidus. What exactly is the essence of Chassidus? And over there, he explains that there's 4 levels in Torah: Pshat, Remes, Drush, and Soid. They correspond to Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chaya. And then Chassidus is the Yechida of Torah. That is, it's not one foot. I mean, the book is available. It's called On the Essence of Chassidus, and it's phenomenal. It's very, very fascinating. They gave out the small booklet that they gave out. That's the synopsis. Talking about the very small one. That was from Rabbi Vogel, who made a synopsis on every chapter, small synopsis on every chapter. But the book with the English translation is quite a bit thicker than that. But it's a work that needs to be properly studied.
Yechida higher than
Yechida is the essence, yeah. Just like the neshama, the Yechida is the essence of the neshama. So, nefesh is the way the neshama expresses itself through action, right? Ruach is the way the neshama expresses itself through emotion. Neshama is the way the neshama expresses itself through intellect. Chaya is the way the neshama expresses itself through will, especially super rational will. Yechida is the essence of the neshama, which is expressed only in Mesiras Nefesh. So in Torah, you have various expressions of Torah. Where Torah manifests itself on the level of Pshat, where Torah manifests itself on the level of Remes, Drush, and Soid. Then you have the essence of Torah, which is higher than all manifestations, and that is found in Chassidus. In Chassidus.
What's the name of the sefer you mentioned?
Kuntrus Inyana Shel Torah Chassidus. In English, it's called On the Essence of Chassidus. Based on a sikha that the Rebbe spoke at the Yutas Kislev Fabrengen of Tavshin Chavav, exactly 60 years. The original Hebrew one, you see, it was published originally as an introduction to the Sefer HaArachim Chabad. That's in the encyclopedia of Chabad Chassidus, which is many volumes have been published, but it's nowhere near off the ground. It's only a few volumes of what they're. So when they started, when Rabbi Yoel Khan was appointed by the Rebbe to work on this Sefer HaRachim Chabad, so they wrote up this talk of the Rebbe from 1965, Tavshin Chavav. They wrote up this talk, and it was edited by the Rebbe, and it was published in the first volume of Sefer HaRachim Chabad. Later, it was published as an individual. As a pamphlet on its own, a paperback pamphlet on its own, and later it was published with an English translation. First it was published in only English, and then it was published as part of the Heritage series in a bilingual form.
Yes.
Yeah. It was published at some point in only English many years ago, and the Heritage series started. They published it in a bilingual form. Anyway. So when this happens, when a person's neshama is expressing itself through his thought, by engaging his thought, through his action, by engaging his action in the mitzvahs, and through his speech, by using his speech to discuss the explanation and the laws of the mitzvahs of the Torah, and with his thought he comprehends whatever he's capable of comprehending in Torah. So that all the 613 organs of his neshama, just like the body has 613 organs, 248 organs, and 365 sinews or blood vessels, then so the neshama has corresponding to that 613 spiritual organs. So they are all melubashim b'tayag mitzvahs haTorah. They're all enclosed in the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. So it comes out that the mitzvahs of the Torah, which are the thought, speech, and deed of the neshama, nefesh elokis, are the garments of the neshama. When the neshama is using its intellect and emotion and expressing it through the thought, speech, and deed of Torah, that encloses it in the 613 mitzvahs of Torah. Ubepratis, more specifically, to break it down into more specifics. The intellectual faculties of the soul, Chachma bina das of the soul, melubashes b'hasagas haTorah, shu masig b'pardes. They are enclosed in the comprehension of Torah that the person manages to comprehend in the four levels of Pshat, Remes, Drush, and Soy, according to what that person is capable of comprehending. Some people have sharper minds, some people's minds aren't so sharp. And according to whatever the person is capable of understanding, his full potential is enveloped in the understanding of Torah. So the organs of his soul are completely wrapped up in the understanding of Torah. It's according to his ability to understand. The sheiresh nafshay l'mayla, and according to the root of his neshama l'mayla. We learned in Perek Beis in chapter 2. We learned that the neshama goes through a whole process of ishtalshelus, and that process varies from one neshama to another. And therefore, you have neshamas of atzilus, you have neshamas of bria, neshamas of yitzira, and neshamas of asiyah. So those neshamas who are neshamas of atzilus, they are more connected with the level of soit of Torah. Those neshamas who are neshama of bria and yitzira are more connected with emes and drush. Those neshamas which are neshamas da'asiyah are more connected with pshat. So according to the sheiresh of a person's neshama l'mayla, and according to their capability of understanding, it doesn't really matter. What counts is that their full potential is expressed, is used in investing it through the garment of thought in the understanding of Torah. So that is how the thought, speech, and deed, or for the moment, we're focused mainly on thought, is a garment to the intellectual faculties of the soul. V'hamidus, now the emotional faculties of the soul, shehein yira v'ava, which are the fear of God, and the reverence for God, and the love of God. V'anfeim betul, they say him and their branches and their offspring, because there's actually 7 midas, but all the 7 midas are branches and offspring of ava and yira. Melubashes b'kiyam mitzvahs, they are enclosed in the fulfillment of mitzvahs. B'maisa ubedibur, they're enclosed in the fulfillment of mitzvahs in action. So you put your understanding and especially your emotions, you invest into your actions. And so the actions are the garments through which the emotion is expressed. So a person has a tremendous love for Hashem. He wants to connect to Hashem. Now, how does he put that into action? He puts that into action by doing mitzvahs. So his love for Hashem is invested in the act of mitzvahs. Ubedibur, as well as through speech, Talmud Torah shekeneged kulam, which is the studying of Torah, which our Chachamim tell us is equivalent to all the mitzvahs put together. Now, what does it mean that the emotions are invested and enclosed in one's mitzvahs and one's Torah study? So he explains, because the love of God is the root of all the 248 positive mitzvahs. Every mitzvah is a tzavsa v'chibur, it's a connection, it's a binding experience with Hashem. It's a fusing with Hashem. So if you are passionate about your love for Hashem, you want to do everything that you possibly can to become close to Hashem, to become connected with Hashem. And since we know that we as finite creatures have no way of connecting with the infinite essence of Hashem, the only way we can do so is through the opportunity that Hashem gave us in His Torah through the mitzvahs. He told us, this mitzvah is my will. When you fulfill my will, you become connected with me. So therefore, the love of Hashem is manifest and expressed through the fact that we do His mitzvahs. So it's the sheiresh, it's the root for all the 248 positive mitzvahs. It's from the love of Hashem that they are drawn. And without the love of Hashem, they have no true fulfillment. They have no true survival. Even though, of course, you can argue that a mitzvah we have people that are lacking the love of Hashem and nevertheless are fulfilling mitzvahs. So how can you say that a mitzvah has no kiyum amiti without the love of Hashem? So he explains, because to fulfill a mitzvah be'emes, let me just explain what emes means. Emes means true, everybody knows. But emes is made up of 3 letters, Aleph, Mem, Sof. Aleph is the first letter of the Aleph base, Sof is the last letter of the Aleph base, and Mem is the middle letter of the Aleph. So when something is emes, means it's consistent from top to bottom. Every part of it is consistent. So if a person is fulfilling a mitzvah, and only his hands and feet are invested in the mitzvah, but his heart is somewhere else, and his mind is somewhere in the third place, then he's makayim the mitzvah, but it's not with an emes. It's not, every fiber of his being is not involved. He's doing it very externally. When is a person makayim it be'emes? He's makayim it be'emes when he's oyev Hashem Hashem, the chafetz and dafka be'emes, when he loves Hashem, and he really wants to, he really has a passion to cleave to Hashem, and as a result of his love for Hashem and his passion to cleave for Hashem, that is leading him to do the mitzvah. So then the mitzvah is being fulfilled with an emes. Every fiber of his being is invested in the mitzvah. So even though it's possible to do a mitzvah without the love of Hashem, in fact, not only is it possible to do a mitzvah without the love of Hashem, we're obligated to do mitzvahs. Even when we wake up on the left side and we're not in the mood, can't be bothered, we still have to do mitzvah. Torah requires it of us. But that's not doing it right. That's not doing it the right way. Mitzvah b'lei kavanah, guf b'lei neshama. Mitzvah without kavanah is like a body without a soul. On one hand, the word guf means the essence of it. So even if you do it without a soul, you still have the essence of it. But is that what we're trying to achieve? We're not trying to get away with doing mitzvahs without a soul. We want to do mitzvahs with a soul. We want to do them be'emes. And I'm a kaimam be'emes. When are you fulfilling a mitzvah with an emes? Only if you're oyev Hashem Hashem, if you love Hashem, and you're passionate about connecting to Hashem, and your actions are an expression of your deeper commitment and your deeper passion, then every fiber of your being is involved in the mitzvah. That's why he says that without the avas Hashem, they don't have a emes dikikiyim. Who is considered one fulfilling the mitzvah with an emes? Someone who loves Hashem's name, and truly wants to cleave to Him. The and realizes that it's impossible to truly cleave to Hashem, except through fulfilling the 248 positive mitzvahs. So we'll deal with it. Except through fulfilling the 248 positive mitzvahs, which the Zohar says that the 248 positive mitzvahs are the 248 limbs of the king. What does it mean? So I'll explain it like this. Let's say you have two people who love one another. Love is an emotion. It's in the heart, right? So how do you express that love? So one of the ways to express the love is to embrace the person. Now, when you're embracing the person, you're only embracing their limbs. The love is to the essence of the person. But through embracing their limbs, you're expressing your love to their essence. So what are the limbs of Hashem? We want to embrace Hashem. We love Hashem, we want to embrace Him. How do we embrace Him? The Zohar says the 248 limbs of the king are the 248 positive mitzvahs. Through the fulfillment of the positive mitzvahs, we're giving a tangible expression to our love of Hashem. So it begins with the realization that Hashem is absolutely infinite. And we as finite beings have no connection. The finite and the infinite are two worlds. And when Hashem has given us, in His great compassion and His great mercy and His great love, He's given us the opportunity to connect with Him through the fulfillment of a mitzvah. He said, this is my desire, in which I invest my essence. In the Torah and the mitzvahs, Hashem invests His essence. The word Anochi, which is the first word of the Aseres HaDibros, is Anon Nafshi K'sav V'Siyavis. Hashem has taken His very essence, as I have taken my very essence, written it into the Torah and handed it over to you. So when the Torah says, this is my will, says Hashem, that means that my essence and Hashem and His will are one. Hashem and His wisdom are one, and Hashem and His will are one. So Hashem's essence is communicated in His mitzvah. So when you do the mitzvah, you have an opportunity to connect to the essence of Hashem. And that cannot be done through anything else in the world. Only through the Ramach Pikudin, 248 positive mitzvahs, which are the Ramach Evrim de Malka Kvayachal. They are the 248 limbs and organs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through which we can embrace Him and become connected with Him. So that explains how the love of Hashem is the cause and the root of the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs. And only through fulfilling the mitzvah with the love of Hashem are we fulfilling it with an emes, as we explained what emes means before. However, what still remains a little bit outstanding is we explained how the love is the cause for the mitzvahs. But when we use the word levush, a garment isn't just an outcome. A garment is something you're enclosed in. So if the love is in the heart and the action is in the hands, how could you say that the love is enclosed in the action? The love is causing the action. The love is inspiring the action. But it's not enclosed in it. So this can be understood with a story I think I mentioned a few times, that say that Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev was once Sukkos, Simchas Torah, 9 days, consecutive days, and he didn't put on tefillin. It's Yom Tov, Chalamoid, don't put on tefillin. So at least that's the custom of Chassidim, Chalamoid, don't put on tefillin. It's bad. So the 9 days he didn't put on tefillin. So came the next morning after Yom Tov, he was so excited to put on his tefillin, that his tefillin were in a case, in a glass box. So the box had a door. But he was so passionate and so excited in putting on his tefillin that he didn't have the patience to open the door and remove the tefillin. He stuck his hand right through the glass to take out his tefillin. So that action wasn't just inspired by love. The love was enclosed in the action. The passion was enclosed in the action. So when a person does a mitzvah, it's not just you doing the mitzvah because you thought about it and you came to the conclusion you should do the mitzvah. The love is so part of that action that it permeates the action. The love isn't just in the heart. The love is in the hands and the feet that are doing the mitzvah are permeated with that love. And that's why the mitzvah is called a levush, a garment to the faculties of the soul, which in this case is the love of Hashem is enclosed in the action. And the same thing we're going to see a little further when we talk about how the fear of Hashem is enclosed in the negative mitzvahs. So when a person refrains from doing something forbidden, he can just refrain from doing it. You're not allowed to, you're not going to do it. Or the person is in great reverence for the greatness of Hashem, and he knows that when Chas V'Shalom will do this Aveda, he'll be severed from Hashem. So he doesn't want to go anywhere near it with a 10-foot pole because Chas V'Shalom that'll sever him from Hashem. So you can see in the way the way he's trembling, that in his refraining from doing the forbidden thing, the emotion, the reverence, and the fear of Hashem's greatness is permeating his actions. So it's not only you have to. It has to be the basis of all service of Hashem has to be Yiras Hashem. Because if you're only doing it with love, then basically you're serving yourself. Because you love Hashem, and doing this mitzvah is enabling you to do what you want to do, which is very nice. It's a big madrega. At the end of the day, the Torah says, you have to be servant. You have to be a servant of Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe explains this in the later chapters, that the foundation of all service of Hashem has to be Yirah. But on that foundation, you have to build a building. So what should be consciously felt in the act of a positive mitzvah is primarily the passion to connect to Hashem. Although it has the foundation of knowing how to do what Hashem says, whether you like it or not. But what you should be feeling in the most conscious way is the passion to connect to Hashem. Well, when you're refraining from doing a forbidden thing, then it is you don't want under any circumstances to do something that's going to go against Hashem and thereby sever you from Hashem. Okay?
To say, you mentioned grace to feeling every morning. They've always done that. So it's become a rote. There's no love in it. There's no thought of why you do it. You just do it. Surely.
So that is something that is, you're 100% right that is a possibility. But one of the purposes of studying Tanya and studying Chassidus is an antidote to that problem. Because when you realize how incredibly great Hashem is, you realize that every time you get to connect with Him, you're connecting with Him even more deeply, and it's a greater privilege, and it's even more exciting. So it's you're right, 100% right. That's why you need to study this type of thing in order to keep you from that situation, and it's not a simple matter.
When we're talking about people who have to be as well as to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you get to the stage of being, then everything comes from being, and this goes into one word. Doesn't take away from it. It's just part of the
On one level, it enhances the mitzvah because the mitzvah is a really live mitzvah. It's permeated with the passion. On the other hand, it takes away from the opportunity to be fighting with yourself in a sacrifice for Hashem. So the famous story I mentioned many times in the Tzemach Tzedek, that there was a chassid that came to the Tzemach Tzedek. He said, Rebbe, what should I do? I don't want to learn. I don't have any desire to study Torah. What should I do? So the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, that's incredible. So you don't have a desire to study Torah, and nevertheless you push yourself to do what needs to be done because you know that's what Hashem wants. That's an incredible privilege to make a sacrifice for Hashem on a regular basis. I'm the one that should be complaining. What should I do that I always desire to study Torah? So I never get a chance to make that sacrifice, to do the opposite of what I want for Hashem. So there is an advantage in this approach and an advantage in that approach. And we have to work on both.
Tomorrow, I mean, now,